We talking about practice. Not a game, not a game. We talking about practice.
Welcome everyone to the After Practice podcast. This is a good day. A good day if you're a Washington football fan. But I'm going to tell you something. When I was driving home from the game last night from Pittsburgh back to Ashburn, Virginia, I thought of you. And I thought about how all the national pundits and all the fans of other teams who've kicked this organization while they've been down, and yeah, they've been down for a long time. They've been down for quite a few years, a few decades for that matter. I thought of you today, and I thought about how I wanted to start this podcast and just to let you know, it's okay to stick your chest out today. It's okay to feel good about the Washington football team because yesterday's win was the type of win that hasn't been seen around here for some time. Let's just call it like it is. When was the last time you saw the Washington football team go on the road against an undefeated team, a team that a lot of people are considering a Super Bowl favorite, along with, perhaps Kansas City Chiefs, the defending Super Bowl champion, but nevertheless, a defending, how do you call it? One of those franchises in Pittsburgh that everyone knows. Everywhere you go, you know that terrible towel. Well, there wasn't any terrible towels in the stadium yesterday because of COVID. It was empty. It was just us in the media and the players, and that was it. But with all that said, when was the last time you saw a victory over the type of quality football team that the Pittsburgh Steelers put out on the field yesterday? On the road, on national TV, 2 back-to-back games that this young Washington football team's won on national TV. You go back to Thanksgiving, they destroyed the Dallas Cowboys, their arch rival. You haven't seen these type of wins here in a long time. So it's okay, stick your chest out, pump yourselves up just a little bit. You should feel good that your football team is in the thick of a playoff race. Them and the New York Giants, the 2 teams that most people thought were going to be bottom feeders in the NFC East, are the 2 best teams this year in the NFC East. Who's the best? Who's going to win it? Well, you have 4 games remaining. There's going to be 4 tough games for both teams. But at least for today, on Tuesday, you should feel really good about this football team. They did it with adversity. Yesterday, Antonio Gibson had 2 touches, 14 yards, had a nice 7-yard run. And you're thinking, okay, maybe he'll pick up where he left off in Dallas. Well, he hurts his toe in the first quarter, and he doesn't return. How many of you, and I'm going to put you on the spot right now, how many of you in years past would have checked out right there? Would have said, oh, well, playing the Steelers, they're 11-0, it's at Heinz Field, it's cold as hell. And, folks, it was cold yesterday. When I got out my car to walk into the stadium, I happily had another, jacket in my car. I had to put that jacket under my winter coat. That's how cold it was up in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. It was freezing. It really was. When I walked back to my car after the game, after post-game and all that stuff, it was even colder. And I really felt like, my God, it's like straight winter up here. Yeah, it was cold. So you just weigh all these different things that played into why this win was big. It keeps Washington, obviously keeps pace with them, with the New York Giants. And it's just going to be a good story to see how this team unfolds. We talked with Ron Rivera today again, less than 24 hours after talking with him yesterday after the game. And he said, this is going to be about the team's character. This is going to be about, where they are as a culture. And he's looking forward to seeing, where they are. I'm going to say this, and I don't try to throw around hyperbole and different things that don't make sense. I try to think before I speak. But I'm going to say this, and I tweeted this out yesterday. There's a culture change that's going on here, folks. It's quite apparent. You can see it right in front of you. You can't miss this. And again, this team in years past, and I can't say this team, the organization, the old guard, wouldn't have won yesterday. When they went down 14-0, you would have saw infighting amongst players. You would have saw finger pointing. You would have seen guys just tuck their tail and have their face pushed in the dirt. We saw that for years. Sorry for some of my old friends who played for these teams. I'm not acquitting everyone, and saying that everyone would do that. I'll quit my guys because I know that they worked hard and they wanted to win. But unfortunately, this team was laden with prima donnas. And those prima donnas, those prima donnas cost this team games. Those prima donnas kept this team from going to another level. And they stayed in mediocrity. They just could not get out the way of their own shadow. That's not Ron Rivera's football team here. This is a different looking team. And I say this because I know I was there. I am there. I see practice. I'm telling you, yesterday in Pittsburgh, and again, I try to inform you on everything that I see that maybe you can't from afar. I tweeted out, if you're back home in D.C., literally, you're not seeing the sidelines. You're not seeing this team meeting each other coming off the field. Every time they had a big play, I mean, you're talking offensive players greeting defensive players coming off the field and vice versa. Dustin Hopkins, literally when he made the second field goal to make it 23-17 late in the fourth, I mean, you saw everyone coming out to thank him, to high five with him. I haven't seen that in a long time. I just haven't. And I'm not blowing smoke here. I'm not getting caught up in the moment. I'm telling you what my eyes see, and I trust what I see. This is a young football team that's starting to believe that they can do something, that they're starting to believe, you know what, we belong in the NFL. A lot of these guys were rookies, they're still rookies, but I'm saying a lot of these guys were unproven rookies that were just trying to find their way, trying to get adapted to the game speed of the NFL, trying to, not make Ron Rivera and Scott Turner and Jack Del Rio their coordinators and coaches, not upset them, run their assignments, do what they're supposed to do. Well, now these guys aren't necessarily out on the field thinking. They're reacting. And I remember when Ron Rivera said to us early in the offseason, he said, one of the things that he wants to do is he wants to get guys to be in position where they can just play football and not always have to think, not be robots out there, but just be able to freely play and play fast. That defense is playing really fast right now. And that front four, there's times where you look at them and you're like, man, they need to be doing more. Early in the game yesterday, they weren't generating any type of pass rush on Ben Roethlisberger. And it was apparent, that they were struggling. Well, one of the other things that we haven't seen here, at least in a long time, is halftime adjustments. You have to go back to the Joe Gibbs era. Well, Jack Del Rio has done a couple times this year, made adjustments, and the defense responded. Scotty Turner, I will say sometimes I'm skeptical of the play calling. I was not a big fan of the fourth and one. And, they tried to do a little jet sweep. But I didn't like it. It was a little trickery in there. Just line up and go forward. Put Logan Thomas under the center if that's what you want to do. He'll fall forward and get you a half a yard. That's all you needed. Whole nother story for a whole nother day. But I thought Scott Turner adapted his game plan. No Antonio Gibson. They adapted the game plan. And Alex Smith, what can you say about him? Listen, the old man may not look like Dan Marino out there, okay? He may not look like, the ultimate Aaron Rodgers gunslinger. But at the end of the day, this guy's a winner. Everywhere he's been, he's won football games. You show me another quarterback that has played for the Washington football team, formerly known as the Washington Redskins, who consistently won games as their starter. I'm going to ask you, take me way back. You have to go back to the Super Bowl days. Someone may say Brad Johnson. No. I'm talking about for multiple seasons when the guy was the starter, they won. Before Alex Smith was injured, they were 6-3. They were winning. They were winning ugly, but they were winning. And I know guys personally. Guys in that locker room were saying this guy's the ultimate leader. I remember when he was traded here. I'll tell you guys a story all the time. Friend of mine, Therese Paler, who writes for Yahoo, did a great job at the time writing for the Kansas City Tribune or the Kansas City Star, and he called me when Alex Smith was traded here, and he said, you guys are getting a leader of men. Those were his exact words. I'm telling you, the guy knows how to win. He knows how to get the best out of his teammates, and they believe in him. there's no knock on Dwayne Haskins. He's still developing. There's no knock on Kyle Allen. He was doing some things well, but everything has opened up for this team. Not just the offense, but the team. And you rally around your leaders. Everywhere Alex Smith has been in San Francisco, yeah, we all know that he had to give way to Colin Kaepernick. We all know in Kansas City he gave way to Patrick Mahomes. But damn, folks, I mean, those two players that I just named weren't chopped liver. Yeah, Kaepernick's out of the league. Don't tell me it's because his game's not any good. We all know what that's all about. That's a whole nother story, too. But when Colin Kaepernick had first come on the scene, the league hadn't seen anything like that. You were talking about Kaepernick and RG3 changing the way quarterback position was going to be played. They were moving around, doing all these great things. So, yeah, you had to get him on the field. Remember what the guy did against the Green Bay Packers in the playoffs. So, yeah, Alex Smith had to be on the move. Kansas City. I mean, don't think that these guys in practice didn't see Mahomes' arm strength, didn't see the crazy talent that the kid possesses. That's why he's the face of the NFL right now. So he had to be on the move. So you come to Washington, morbid franchise, struggling, and his first year, they were 6-3. If I'm not mistaken, and I go back and check all these things I try to tell you, I think they were in first place in the NFC East for 8 out of those first 9 games that year. So they were a playoff football team. Alex Smith doesn't get hurt. I don't think anybody will debate that. I'm not saying they were going to win the Super Bowl. I'm not saying that they would have been the number 1 seed in the NFC, but they were a playoff team, and they more than likely were going to win that division that year. He gets injured, the bottom falls out. The injury was more than just an injury. And I'm not saying that to be insensitive to Alex because he overcame something horrific. Kudos to him. You know, he's definitely going to be the comeback player of the year. But that injury was more than just an injury. It was something that just sucked the life literally out of Washington's organization. You're talking about a player that had, won over the locker room. You're talking about a player in Alex Smith that had won over the coaching staff. You're talking about a player in Alex Smith that had won over the front office. This organization had never had a player like that did it on all 3 levels. And he was. And to this very day, he still is. And now you're saying why, with him under center, this team's winning. For all of you who think that I'm pumping Alex up a little bit too much, just understand this. 3-1 as a starter since he's been a starter here. They should have won the other game. They should have beat Detroit. Let's just call it like it is. They had Detroit on the ropes and couldn't get it done. Okay. Understand yesterday, he's 4 yards short of throwing for 300 yards again. That would have been the 3rd time he's done that. I understand, yesterday was a lot of checkdowns, deke and dunks, but you're playing Pittsburgh's defense, which was ranked the number 1 defense in the NFL against the run. They took the run away from Washington. So Washington had to be creative and do some other things. And like I said, second half they did. They started to do those things. Alex Smith, big touchdown drive. They had 2 touchdown drives that he orchestrated. I mean, the touchdown drive that Peyton Barber scored, on the first drive of the 3rd quarter, that was huge. Alex Smith helped them get up and down the field. 4th quarter, to tie the game, to Logan Thomas. Logan Thomas had a hell of a game. His bank account should be chirping and ringing today because he just made money after yesterday's game. This is a guy that's going to be their starting tight end for a couple years now, and I don't think that's a hole on this position on this team anymore. As far as a starting tight end, yeah, I do think that they need some help and some depth at the tight end position for sure. But Logan Thomas, to me, has solidified himself as Washington's starting tight end for the next 2-3 years, and he's getting better and better and better after every game, getting more comfortable, getting back to the position that made him the top recruit in high school football at that position. So, again, you're starting to see him get back to doing the things that made him a special prospect at tight end, and now he's no longer a prospect, in my opinion. He's a guy that, just keeps growing and growing and growing. Perhaps maybe he even has a Pro Bowl in his immediate future at the tight end position. That's how well he's playing. So, yeah, this was one that was different. It just, driving back home, I have to tell you, normally long road trips, 4, 5, 6 hour drives, wow, those things are tough, where you say, we're just going to get a hotel, blah, blah, blah. Well, let me tell you, I was wired after yesterday's game. I was just excited. yeah, I'm in the media, and you know, we can be excited too. You know, when you cover a team that's winning, it makes your life a lot easier. Well, let me rephrase that. Nothing's easy in this business, but it just makes it more refreshing. It makes it, you know, you're able to create more storylines, more positivity, you know, in your reporting. And you know me, I like to always be positive. So it was just a good feeling to be able to come back and drive 4+ hours back to Ashburn and say to myself, man, I have so many angles, so many things that I can do, that I can write about. As always, speaking of the writing, go to sportsjourney.com. You can check out my writing. You can check out Bob Matthews is doing some great Washington coverage as well. You know, we getting into basketball season, Wizards cover. Karita Parks does a great job covering the Wizards for us. DJ Bland breaks down a lot of NFC South stuff, and he and Karita have a great podcast together. Got my good friend Sergio Rodriguez back with us, you know, who was my longtime co-host on ESPN Radio back in the day in Florida. You can check out his podcast on the site. Wole Akinso in the urban sports scene. DJ Bland, again, like I said, he's got the podcast. So check us out. It's a lot of good stuff going on with Sports Journey. I just, you know, I just wanted to say this. I did, because I know some of you are probably already taking heat. You know, I had a couple of people tell me, man, Washington fans are acting like they won the Super Bowl. They just beat Pittsburgh. They beat an undefeated team, the only undefeated team in their own building. I mean, damn, what more do you want? Fans shouldn't feel good when their teams win. Fans shouldn't feel good that their young football team is turning a corner right before your eyes. Washington fans shouldn't feel good that their organization is turning a corner right before your eyes. You know, this stuff started with the name change. I know some of you still don't like hearing it. It needed to be done. It was done. Live with it. It's not going backwards. So embrace the change. Embrace positive change. If you know, it's a positive move, and I said this before, they could have named themselves the Washington Cotton Candies for all I care. If they're winning games, guess what? Cotton Candy's jersey is going to be everywhere. Cotton Candy T-shirts going to be everywhere. People are going to be buying cotton candy off the stores because a winner sells. So right now, guess what? I said this last week. The Washington football team. Tell me that name doesn't ring a bell now. Tell me the Washington football team, that W, you know, that founded 1932. Tell me that that's not kind of like sitting in your psyche right now. Tell me those white jerseys yesterday weren't banging. Listen, I've said it before. You look good, you play good. And yesterday, they got a dub. I'm using exactly Cam Sims' own words. He said after the game in our presser, he said we had to get a dub with those whites on. Listen, those players like it. Today, Ron Rivera said himself, he likes it. He said they used to do white on whites in Carolina. They only did them for big games. And he said, so when the guys mentioned it, he was all for it. He said, yeah, he wants to keep it going. He wants to keep doing it. Well, Coach, if you're watching, I know we follow each other on social media. Let me say this to you. You have to wear those again. You have to wear those each week now, because every game from here on out's a big game. You have to wear those white on whites. And the fact that they were just cold. I mean, they were clean. You know, when I got to the stadium and I saw the guys coming out, and I'm like, wait a minute, they got the whites on. I thought it looked even better because I like the helmet. I like the no logo, no stripes on the helmet. I've always said, even when they had the logo, I would have liked to have just taken the stripes off the helmet and just had a matted, you know, kind of Tennessee Titans flat, dull look. You know, as far as like just a nice, clean look. Yesterday was about as clean as they could possibly come. I thought that uniform combination looked really good. I just thought it was nostalgic. I remember seeing the late, great Sean Taylor in that white on white, wreaking havoc on the field. And that defense yesterday, you know, they would have made the young man proud. I will say this. That defense got after it yesterday. In the second half, they made play after play after play. Think about all the times the Steelers' drives were stymied when it looked as if they were on the verge of, you know, trying to open things up. I saw Juju Smith-Schuster get hammered several times by Cam Curl. I saw, Chase Claypool, all these big-time receivers for the Steelers. I listen, I was there. You were home, you saw it. A lot of these receivers had the drops. Listen, I'm just saying. When you have the drops, yeah, it was cold, but that's Pittsburgh. They should be used to that. It snowed up there last week. They should be used to that. It was cold against the Ravens. They should be used to that. I think when some guys start putting a hat on you, over time, you start thinking about, before you catch the ball, where those guys are. And there was a lot of drop passes yesterday by the Pittsburgh Steelers wide receiving core, which I said only are rivaling, the Kansas City Chiefs is the best unit in all of football, in my opinion at least. They had the drops. I think defense does that to you. Second half, you started to see, those young linebackers start to, and I call them linebackers even though they're playing defensive line, and Montez Sweat and Chase Young, so used to that 3-4 that they used to run. But yeah, they're defensive linemen now. Hybrid rushing linebackers, stand-up guys. Well, anyway, they started wreaking havoc. And that second half, you could see Ben was a little jittery back there. He avoided several blitzes. He avoided several times where Washington probably should have pulled him down, but that's what Big Ben does. He to be so big, he does so many dynamic things to stay upright and not take the sack. And he was getting rid of the ball extremely quick, probably the fastest I've ever seen him get rid of the ball in his career this year. It's like 2 seconds, the ball was gone. So it was tough to get to him. But Washington started to slowly but surely impose their will on Pittsburgh's offensive line. And it was tough sledding for Pittsburgh in the second half. They couldn't generate anything. They just couldn't do it. Hence, 14 at halftime, 17 at the end of the game. Give credit to where credit is due, and that's Washington's defensive coaching staff. Ron Rivera, Jack Del Rio did a great job making adjustments, and their defense did the job for them to get the 23-17 win. As always, folks, follow us on social media. As far as the podcast, you can subscribe to this on Apple. If you have an iPhone, a Mac, iPad, you can subscribe to it that way. Or you can subscribe to it on all the other major podcast carriers, Google Podcasts, iHeartRadio, Spotify, outside of Apple. It's everywhere, so we appreciate all the support. You can follow me on social media on Twitter at Lake Lewis and on Instagram and Facebook at Lake Lewis Jr. We're going to take a quick break. And when we come back, more after practice. Welcome back, everyone. On SportsJourney.com, there's a poll on there as far as the NFC East race. And I put it up there last week, before the start of Week 13. But it asks, who's going to win the NFC East? Let us know your thoughts. They're fans of all four teams that watch this podcast, that listen to the podcast. Of course, you can watch this on SportsJourney.com, too, and I got to keep plugging that. You can subscribe to the video version of this on YouTube, on Sports Journey's YouTube channel. So lots of different things there. Who's going to win the division? It's just a good feeling to be in December, and this team has meaningful football games. Every game here out's a playoff game. The irony of all this, though, is that the Giants and Washington, again, these were the two teams that everyone said was going to be bad. Two new coaches. Joe Judge in New York was a guy that some people thought shouldn't even been given an opportunity to be a head coach yet because he kind of bypassed some steps. He was a special teams guy. Was never an offensive coordinator or defensive coordinator for that matter, at least at the pro level. But there's a guy up the road in Baltimore, and John Harbaugh, that took the same steps. Went from Philadelphia as their special teams coordinator to becoming the Baltimore Ravens coach, and it's worked out pretty well for them. It's worked out super well for them in Baltimore. So it can be done. And I think Joe Judge is going to silence a lot of people that think that you need to have a coordinator gig under your belt in order to get a job. There's different layers to why he should have been given that job over some other candidates who are qualified. But this isn't to sling anything right now. This is to talk about the job that he's doing up there, and he's doing a really good job. He's, got that defense humming. Giants defense is playing as well as any unit in the NFL at this point. They go out to Seattle, dismantle them, And then, of course, here, Ron Rivera, changing the culture right before your eyes. And his defense is humming right now. The offenses are getting the job done, too. You know, you think about what Alex Smith has had to do, what Daniel Jones has had to do. Last week, Colt McCoy steps in for Daniel Jones. These guys are, you know, trying to play mistake-free football on the offensive side of the ball. If you don't turn the ball over and you have a great defense, you have a chance to win games. And that's exactly, these teams are kind of mirror images of each other. Ultimately, what might be Washington's undoing is the fact that the Giants have that 2 games, you know, as far as beating them. So they almost have, you know, you almost have to lose twice if you're the Giants for Washington to have a shot. And it's going to be tough because the Giants are playing good football. It still can be done. Washington obviously has to do their part and win their games just to give themselves a chance too. So, you know, those 2 coaches, obviously we know about Ron Rivera here in D.C. and the job that he's doing, but Joe Judge needs to be given a lot of credit as well. Mike McCarthy in Dallas, Doug Peterson in Philadelphia. Doug Peterson, Mike McCarthy, 2 Super Bowl winning coaches. Teams aren't looking too good right now. Teams don't look coached up properly right now. Call it like it is. Teams look like the culture in their buildings have become me cultures. I see it. Trust me, I'm qualified to say it if I see it because I saw it here. And that's what I see with those 2 organizations. May have to make some changes. And you know, I can say this too. Being down here, I don't care. It's okay that it's not the team that I'm covering that makes my off seasons even longer. It'll be a nice story to talk about this young team and what their expectations should be for next year. You know, they're going to be a team that will be a considerable playoff favorite. You know, are they a team that should really challenge for the division again next year? We understand Dallas had an injury to Dak Prescott, their quarterback. I thought that they were going to be the best team in the division this year. I thought the Eagles would be better. Both those teams have had some injuries. They have. But for them to be as bad as they are with the talent that they still are able to produce on Sundays on their 53-man roster, it's unfathomable. It should not happen, period. Again, Giants, Washington, young teams, unproven players, proving themselves, playing for each other, playing together, and they're getting dubs. They're getting dubs. For everyone to say before last Sunday that the NFC East hasn't beaten a team with a winning record all year, well, they just beat 2 mammoth big boys. They just beat the Seahawks, who are a team that some people, you know, including myself, will represent the NFC in the Super Bowl. Starting to wane a little bit on that prediction, though, because they're struggling a little bit. And what I saw against the Giants just put a blueprint out on Seattle. Physicality against their offense, and it might not be able to do some things. So again, Washington, they beat the juggernaut this year. They beat the 11-0 Steelers in their backyard. What more can you ask? So again, not going to talk about anything else. Just wanted to come on, get this done for you real quick. Audio version again, you can subscribe to all the carriers. You can check this out in video on YouTube, sportsjourney.com. Subscribe as well on there. And we'll be back tomorrow. So tomorrow, we'll mix it up. We'll talk some Wizards. I'm going to reach out to Karita Park, see if I can get her on, talk about John Wall on the move. Obviously, he's with the Houston Rockets now. Washington gets Russell Westbrook. She's been on top of all that stuff. So reach out to her and see if we can get her on. We'll talk about that. And, as the week progresses, we'll start talking about the 49ers as well. That game will be in Arizona, not Santa Clara. So we'll be talking about that as well. So appreciate you taking time. Check me out. I'm tired. Got to get some rest. It's been a long 24 hours. But, hey, you get a dub. It's good. Take care, everybody.